So we look at the different types of scatter plots we could have. These two are positive correlation, and so the word correlation is another word for relationship. And so these two scatter plots, it kind of show us a positive correlation, whereas these two scatter plots show us a negative correlation and of course no correlation. The difference in them is the strength. And so what we look at, we have some words here. We have strong, moderate, no, moderate, and strong. So we can have a strong positive, or we can have a strong negative. We can have a moderate positive or a moderate negative, and then we can have no correlation. There are other words, but these are the more common words that we use to describe a relationship in statistics. And those words basically look at the strength of the relationship. And so if we look at the strong correlation, the strong positive or the strong negative, this is data that's more closely related. Nearly all of these points fall on the same path or the same trend, as we can observe that here as well. These are all closely clustered together. When we move to the word moderate, there's more variation in the data. So these are not all of them follow the same trend. It's still increasing overall, but we from this point to this point increase, and then from this point to these 2 points it stays the same, and then it kind of jumps back up again. Same thing with moderately negative. Not all the points follow exactly the same trend, but overall it is negative because it's decreasing. With no correlation, there is no way to determine if there is a trend. So these are just scattered everywhere. There's no really identifiable pattern here like there is in the previous two with the positive correlation, or the next two with negative correlation. In chapter 10, we look at describing the strength of the relationship with a numerical value called a correlation coefficient. But in chapter 2, the only thing that we need to be able to do is, can we describe the relationship as either positive or negative based on the graph that we create. So in this example, I've already created the graph because you won't have to graph anything by hand. You'll just click points on the computer, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the problem says a researcher wishes to determine whether the number of hours a person jogs per week is related to the person's age. Draw a scatter plot and comment on the nature of the relationship. So this is the table that gives us the information for our independent quantity and our dependent quantity. So the person's age and the hour they spend jogging. And this is the graph that I made in Excel to kind of quickly go over that information before I kind of check out the homework with you. And we can clearly see that the graph is decreasing. So to interpret it, we would just say there's a negative relationship between the number of hours a person is spent jogging and their age. And the causes for the negative relationship are primarily, if we look at the person's age, as the person's age increases. So as we go from 22 years old on up to 62 years old, as the person's age increases, the number of hours they spend jogging decreases. So anytime we have a relationship where one quantity increases and the other quantity decreases, we consider that to be a negative association or a negative relationship. Now, in this example, you definitely wouldn't want to have to graph all this by hand. So again, I used Excel to create the graph. But we want to draw a scatter plot of the data and describe the nature of a relationship. And we want to determine, is there a relationship between the number of points earned or the number of points scored versus the number of wins. And so as we observe the data from the left to the right, so from about 4 wins all the way up to about 12 wins, we can see overall, with some exceptions, there is a positive association or a positive correlation. Now, the strength of this relationship is not as strong as the previous problem because there's a little more scattering, but still positive. And so for this one, we could simply say there's a positive relationship between the number of points and the number of wins. And it's positive because as the number of wins increases, so does the number of points. So anytime we have a relationship where both quantities tend to increase, that creates a positive relationship.